I put out a post after he hijacked the treasury. And I said, look, I will never just stop podcasting without telling you ahead of time. So if I stop podcasting, it's not because I decided to, it's because somebody stopped me from doing it. And everyone's like, well, that's a cryptic, scary post. And I'm like, it's kind of a cryptic, scary time.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Well, I had a completely different podcast recorded for this week, and then this weekend happened. So my guest and dear friend, Dr. Allison Gill, agreed to come back and join me again to discuss what the hell is going on in America and how completely intolerable it is to live under the whims of a wannabe dictator, his yes men, and the ketamine-addled tech bro he's given full access to our lives. So we're going to go through what has been happening over the past couple of days and try and make some sense of this mess for you. I will say none of this is good, but you can't shut down because of that, because that's exactly what these terrible people want you to do. If you don't know Dr. Allison Gill, she is the founder and CEO of MSW Media, a podcast network focused on news, politics, and justice. Allison, or AG as she's known, is a military veteran who worked at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, but lost her job after she was targeted by Trump for being a confidential contributor and host of the Mueller, She Wrote podcast. Allison went on to create The Daily Beans, a political and social justice podcast that gives the news with swearing 5 days a week and is a woman who really knows what's going on. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, new media visionary, military veteran, and warrior still willing to fight for this nation, Dr. Allison Gill. Welcome back, AG.
Good morning again.
Good morning again. Thank you for coming back. As I was saying in the intro, we had this whole conversation about the chaos we're living through on Friday morning. But by Saturday night, you and I were talking, we were like, is that conversation already out of date? I mean, the amount of criminal activity, criminally adjacent behavior, unconstitutional oversteps, and quite frankly, just piss poor leadership that happened over the weekend is astonishing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do it all over again with me, especially since I might end up just talking at you half the time.
Oh, it's totally fine. I was actually sitting here trying to remember what we talked about Friday morning. What was huge news on Friday morning? And it's escaping me.
I know. That's exactly it. It's like, we're 14 days into this presidency, and taking in information is exactly what you said. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. It is overwhelming. It hurts. It shouldn't have to be done, but that's kind of the point, right? That's what they're doing to us.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing to us, which is why I appreciate so much what you do. You help, like, this is kind of what I tell people when they listen to the Daily Beans, is like, I'm here to try to filter this fire hose for you a little bit so it doesn't hit you straight on. I'm kind of standing in between you and the fire hose, and also here to make you feel not so alone, and that to assure you that you, even if they're trying to isolate you, that you aren't crazy for thinking this way and feeling this way, that you're not alone. And those are some of the most important things, I think, that you do here on the PoliticsGirl podcast. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, no, thank you. And honestly, I think that's true. We need people who aggregate information, who take the hits, who go and look for the stuff, and then say, what is it that people really need to know? What are the takeaways here? Because otherwise it's too much. There's too much out there, right? I mean, we were talking about this fire hose situation. I mean, this is a tactic. It's an actual way of doing things. Steve Bannon calls it flooding the zone. Naomi Klein, who's an author, calls it the shock doctrine. Stephen Miller is calling it shock and awe. But to be clear, it's the same thing. It's a deliberate strategy to get just a ridiculous amount of stuff, from completely dismantling our government institutions to looting our agencies, to just basically use chaos and crisis to push through these giant radical changes. So people are just too disoriented to notice. They can't effectively resist. And we have to be really clear to people that none of this is politics as usual. It is a strategic exploitation of our limits.
No, 100%. And just trying to think back to last week, I think one of the main things that you and I were talking about was this sort of slow dismantling of our institutions, but also that in the middle of the night, he tried to seize the power of the purse. He tried to seize Congress's like one main thing that they do, appropriations. And since then, we've had a restraining order go out against, we had to get a restraining order against the president for seizing Congress's powers, for overstepping his constitutional bounds.
We had to get a restraining order against our felon adjudicated rapist criminal president. That seems kind of actually in line with what we elected. Like listen,
a lot of us have restraining orders on our exes,
Holy shit, you gotta laugh so you don't cry. I was saying to you this morning that my voice was like really raspy and I was like, I've become a revolutionary. Here's where I am now, Allison. Like, this is what's happening now. Like, when we chatted on Friday, just to trigger your mind, the big story was exactly what you're saying, this OPM memo, which was essentially Trump signing an executive order to freeze trillions of dollars of congressionally approved funding so he could kind of personally decide if he thought those people or those agencies deserved it, which he absolutely had no authority to do. And it was a big deal, like an impeachment level big deal.
We impeached him for it before when he stopped aid going to Ukraine. And that was just, $468 million? And one thing. This is the government entire and trillions of dollars, 6 trillion, 3 trillion, a lot of money. That money I can't even wrap my head around how much money it is.
No, absolutely. And he also fired, last week we were talking about how he fired a bunch of inspector generals whose entire job it is to make sure there's no government corruption or mismanagement. And the inspector generals were suing because they can't actually get fired that way. They need 30 days notice. They need a real reason that the president wants to fire them. But the bottom line is, it's very clear that Donald Trump doesn't want anyone watching what he does. He doesn't want anyone, noticing he's lying or cheating or stealing. And he's trying to get rid of the watchdogs, right? And those two things alone, the inspector generals and the memo freezing trillions of dollars of money, those things alone were 5 alarm fires that you and I were discussing on Friday. And I'm not even mentioning like the mass immigrant roundups or the first commercial airline crash in 16 years that happened in DC, or the plane crash in a residential Philadelphia neighborhood the next day, or Trump gutting the aviation industry and putting some Yahoo in charge of our military, or allowing Elon to force the head of the FAA to resign. That was also what we discussed on Friday. And we got to the point after all of those things where we were like, yeah, we got to move on. Like, that's the problem with this president. He's doing so much at once that you're like, that is all horrible and impeachable and like illegal. And yet we have to talk about other things.
Right, which is why we had to reconvene. And, back in his first term, like I said, he had that one impoundment against Ukraine. We impeached him for it. He also fired 5 inspectors general during his first term. And everybody was like, what? And now it's 20. It's all of them except for Horowitz, who wrote a report against Comey, right? And Kufari, who should have been fired from his position by Joe Biden, but probably would have been brought back by Trump anyway. He was the DHS inspector general, the one that withheld the information from Congress that all of the text messages from January 6th Secret Service agents had been missing, and lied about that. But that, Raskin and everybody was like begging Joe Biden to fire that guy. So yeah, now we've got 20 of those, and we've got the dismantling of people watching him, which kind of leads us to why we had to come back and talk about this, because just hours after we spoke, not only has he fired all the inspectors general, but he's dismantling the federal law enforcement in our country, the FBI and the Department of Justice, completely purging it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to get to that because that's astounding. But for me, it's not the lead story. Allison, it's not the lead story. I'm going to talk first as what I think is the lead story is Friday night.
Is it the treasury thing?
Yes. Yeah. I can't take it. I mean, listen, Friday night, if those of you who don't know, Friday night came and we found out that Elon Musk and his staff had been caught plugging in their hard drives inside the Office of Personal Management, which is basically the government's HR department, the Treasury Department, which is literally where all of our money, all of our Social Security, all of our bank accounts are stored, and the General Services Administration. So after the head of the Treasury stood in Elon's way of accessing all of our personal information, information. He was forced to resign, which gave Elon access to the systems managing the flow of more than $6 trillion annually. And he and his honest to God teenage acolytes, these people are 12 years old and they're all Elon stans, started downloading them onto their own servers. This is information like for programs for Social Security and Medicare. At the OPM, they were accessing systems, including the Enterprise Human Resources Integration System, which is like a huge national database that contains sensitive information for millions of government employees, like their dates of birth and their Social Security numbers and their performance appraisals and home addresses and pay grades and length of service, all this stuff that they had no business getting. And then when government employees at that office started speaking out and saying like, yo, what's he doing? He's not allowed to do this. Musk's aides locked them out of their own computer systems and their offices and started rooting around in their stuff. They had like sofa beds against the door and they were stopping them from even coming into the rooms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's absolutely frightening. I know I did an interview with somebody who had looked up the public-facing DNS server subdomains for opm.gov and got like, I did this all in my Substack. I interviewed this guy and wrote it all up, but got like, this was like early on sleuthing just in the middle of last week. This is how fast all of this is going. And saw like 700 subdomains and then came back 12 hours later and about 400 of them had been redacted. So they found out that somebody was looking. But for that whole night, those subdomains were available for public view because they had been uploaded to the cloud and started being manipulated, including that hr@opm.gov email address where everybody got an email with a warning that says, do not open, do not click on links. This comes from outside the agency, from outside the government. It's absolutely horrifying and frightening. And then to see that develop into, they did the same thing at Treasury. And now everybody knows you get one of those checks with the little pink and green and the Statue of Liberty and it says United States Treasury on it. You're getting a tax refund or you're getting a stimulus check or you're getting paid by the government or you're in the military and you're getting paid or you're getting your disability check.
Or you're a veteran, right?
Right. I've gotten so many Treasury checks from either being paid for being in the military, being paid for working at the VA, getting all of my tax returns that way. They now have if you've ever gotten a Treasury check, they now have all of your information.
Yeah, it's a full breach of government. And as I said on my Sunday night rant, the richest man in the world is stealing from you, right? Like, show me another foreign national with deep ties to China and Russia who supports the neo-Nazi party in Germany, who could just waltz into these government departments, lock government workers out of their own computers and buildings, and download our most personal information, right? Just willy-nilly. Like, he would be arrested in minutes. Any other person would be arrested in the minutes. The fact that this man is able to rob us blind of our information and God knows what he's going to do with it, and he's just allowed to do that? No, he's not allowed to do that. In fact, a private individual with access to our Social Security information alone violates the data privacy laws in every state in this nation. And in fact, all 50 AGs should be filing criminal charges immediately because this should never have been allowed. I really want to acknowledge, and I think it's important to acknowledge, that Americans' data has been compromised, right? Like, you're talking about, if you are any government worker, if you have ever received a stimulus check, if you have ever received a check from the government, they have your information. This is all of our information. I mean, we were concerned about, TikTok might know your email address. It's like, this is our Social Security numbers, our banking information, our income tax returns, our tax ID numbers. We've been robbed and our own president opened the door to the thief. Right? Like, this is not something we should be like, this just happens in government. It does not happen. What we have is an unelected billionaire now with the potential ability to have complete control over our nation's money. And that is our tax dollars, our Social Security payments, the money we use for everything, right? From building highways and bridges to making sure we're safe in planes, make sure our banks are safe, right? This is the money that funds medical research and universities and stops terrorist attacks and prosecutes criminals. The authoritarian expert Ruth Ben-Ghiat called what Musk was doing a national emergency. So we can't pretend that this isn't a big deal. We couldn't even put up the pod we'd recorded. We were like, we have to talk about this right now so people understand what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I know we're going to talk in a minute about walking out our federal law enforcement, the
Yeah,
people who
that's
would
next.
be holding him accountable for this. But here's where I've got like a little kind of sliver of hope. None of us kind of expect the new Department of Justice or the FBI to do anything. But what he's doing to the FBI and the Department of Justice is really upsetting a lot of people who might have voted for this regime, is the only way I can think to put it. So it'll be interesting. We have a lot of people digging in. Driscoll and Dennehy in New York, FBI, like what's left of the top FBI people, really upset about what's going on at their agency.
Okay, well, let's talk about that because you know these people well. Okay, so like what Allison is talking about is over the weekend, Trump also did a huge purge of the FBI and the Justice Department. Both organizations, to be clear, are set up to be non-political, right? These are career law enforcement officers, all of whom have worked under multiple administrations, Republican and Democrat. These are not political appointees, right? And yet the administration has forced out all 6 of the FBI's most senior executives, multiple heads of various FBI field offices across the country, including the high-profile leader of the Washington, D.C. field office that was involved in the prosecutions of President Donald Trump. They've fired at least 24 federal prosecutors who conducted the criminal investigations of the January 6th rioters, which, to be clear, was their job, right? So would you call this a hostile takeover of federal law enforcement?
It absolutely is. And I think anybody who kind of really understands what's happening, it's not just a dismantling and a firing of agents or prosecutors or lawyers. It's completely shutting down our premier federal law enforcement agency. It's meant to, you and I have talked about this a lot, about the slow pace of the January 6th investigation. And a lot of that was caused by FBI people, right? And holdovers at the FBI from the Trump administration, and how a lot of people in the FBI were really kind of gun shy about investigating Donald Trump and investigating people in power because of what happened during the Mueller investigation. If you'll remember, a lot of FBI agents who worked on the Mueller investigation, Pete Strzok, Andy McCabe, all of Jim Comey, Jim Baker, they all got retaliated against. And so the whole of FBI was like, we don't want to do a no-knock raid on Mar-a-Lago. Can we do a subpoena instead? And let's not break down that locked door. And maybe we don't wear our FBI jackets. And we should call them ahead of time. And maybe we shouldn't subpoena the Willard for the war room stuff. Like, they were very trepidatious. But now, picture it now. And that was just from what the Mueller report did and the Mueller investigation did. Picture it now after the January 6th investigation, and especially after walking all of these agents out of the Department of Justice and the FBI. We're talking a half to a third of the entire FBI, because it wasn't just about who investigated Trump. It was anyone now who had anything to do with any January 6th case. You are not only firing a bunch of agents that maybe could be replaced later, but you are telling the FBI and the Department of Justice for the next 50 years, don't ever investigate anyone in this administration or in any related administration. But I'm holding out hope that they are so mad now at the FBI and the Department of Justice, like maybe they'll show up at that OPM office where the couches are blocking the door and arrest Elon Musk. He doesn't work for the government.
The beginning of the year is the perfect time to get organized, set goals, and prioritize what matters most. With the chaos that's happening around us, one of my top priorities is going to be our financial wellness. And one of the ways to get a hold on that is by using Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money shows you all of your subscriptions in one place and helps easily cancel the ones you forgot you were paying for. Rocket Money also pulls together all of your spending across different accounts so you can clearly track your habits and see where you could cut back. The new goals feature automatically saves money for you, so you don't even have to think about it. Pay off credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings. Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They deal with customer service, so you don't have to. A lot of people could use this service, which is probably why Rocket Money has over 5 million users and saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving its members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/politicsgirl today. That's rocketmoney.com/politicsgirl. rocketmoney.com/politicsgirl. Are you frustrated with your current skincare routine and tired that you rarely see lasting results? That's where today's sponsor, OneSkin, comes in. In honor of National Women's Investors Month, I would like to highlight OneSkin's founding team of female scientists who developed a whole new approach to skincare, starting at the cellular level. Their proprietary OS1 peptide is the first peptide scientifically proven to reverse skin aging by switching off the dysfunctional sentient cells that cause lines, wrinkles, and crepey skin. OS1 is in all of OneSkin's topical supplements, from their flagship facial moisturizer and award-winning eye cream to the sunscreen that protects your skin from UV damage and cellular aging, which is the product that I use the most. At the end of the day, your skin is your body's largest organ and the most linked to visible signs of aging. I've taken to carrying OneSkin in my purse so I can get it on my hands when I'm in the car. Our hands have such a way of aging us that I want to make sure that every time I'm driving, I have sunscreen on them and my arms. OneSkin was founded in 2016 by an all-women team of scientists with PhDs in skin regeneration, stem cell biology, immunology, and bioinformatics. They run their R&D process completely in-house, adhering to the scientific process from start to finish. Every claim they make is based on lab and clinical studies that show the OS1 peptide works at the cellular level to improve key aging biomarkers while reducing the visible signs of aging. OneSkin believes the purpose of skincare is not just to improve how you look, but to optimize your skin biology at the cellular level so your skin is more resilient to the aging process in general. Founded and led by an all-woman team of skin longevity scientists, OneSkin is redefining the aging process with their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient proven to help skin look, feel, and behave like its younger self. Get 15% off with the code PoliticsGirl at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code PoliticsGirl. And after you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the show and tell them that we sent you. Invest in the health and longevity of your skin with OneSkin. Your future self will thank you.
Like maybe they'll show up at that OPM office where the couches are blocking the door and arrest Elon Musk. He doesn't work for the government.
It's just such a blatant abuse of power. Like, to use the presidential office, to use the executive branch of the government like this, it feels like it's just going completely unchecked. You know, as someone wrote online, it's a disgrace that Americans have been promised a country with checks and balances. We've been told this our whole life, that there are constitutional powers, there are checks and balances. And what we're watching is the complete dismantling of that in front of our eyes. There was one FBI agent who said, this is a massacre meant to chill our efforts to fight crime without fear or favor. And Jamie Raskin, who's a Democratic representative in Congress, said Trump's outrageous attack on the DOJ and FBI is a clear and present danger to public safety and a wrecking ball swinging at the rule of law itself. And I think that's what we really need to acknowledge.
Yeah, no, 100%. This isn't just, people don't, I was kind of recording the Unjustified podcast with Andy McCabe when I got the text message from somebody inside the FBI that says 88 agents were just walked out of the Washington field office. And to see Andy McCabe, first of all, react to all of this and this massive purge in real time was really something else.
And tell people who don't know who Andy McCabe might be, tell them why he would react that way, why this matters to him.
Andy McCabe started as a field agent and then worked in New York and worked his way up to DC and became head of the Washington field office and then became deputy director of the FBI. And then when Comey was fired by Donald Trump, Andrew McCabe became the acting director of the FBI.
So him witnessing them like walking a bunch of, like if you picture a bunch of FBI agents holding, brown boxes with their stuff in it and being like walked out of the FBI because they've all lost their jobs because they had the audacity to do their jobs is shocking, especially to someone who knows this business so well, who has run this business.
I mean, he's like, if you think of like the kid who's 17 and joins the army as a private nobody, like no job, and then eventually becomes, a 4-star general. That's what Andy McCabe was of the FBI. And he was heartbroken to see and to be continuing to see what is happening at that agency. Here's what Andy kind of reminded us of. This is the point that I was getting at. These agents don't raise their hand and say, I want to work on the Donald Trump case. Put me on the documents case. I want to work on the January 6th riot case. They're assigned these cases. And this is actually, despite what Donald Trump says, a very conservative agency. So there were probably more Republicans than not.
Yeah, no, we need to be clear that as far as I understand, a Democrat has never run the FBI. In America's history, FBI has always been run by someone that would be considered a conservative Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I don't know if Andy McCabe, I don't even know what his politics are. I mean, that's how down the line lawman he is, right? He just happens to be on the side that's not, the Nazi takeover, which most Republicans that I know that used to be Republicans are as well. Bob Mueller, super Republican, uber Republican, right? But investigating Trump, regardless, they don't pick these assignments. And so my last little shred of hope is that there's somebody, FBI, somebody DOJ, that's like, what Elon Musk is doing is 100% illegal, and he should be immediately arrested. And I'm hoping somebody at the FBI has the intestinal fortitude, as they call it, to get that done, to do that. But what Donald Trump has done with the FBI is to try to ensure that nobody is willing to stick their neck out like that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's just so astounding. We were talking on Friday about them trying to freeze our money, and they had no right to do that, no constitutional right to do that, no authority to do that, but they were stopped. So then they went right to the source. They went to the U.S. Treasury, which is essentially the country's bank account. It's how we pay for things, right? So instead of freezing the money, they went to the money. And when the person in charge said, you can't be here, like you have no access here, you have no business being here, he was forced to resign. The same way the head of the FAA was forced to resign, right? Because Elon didn't like him. And then how many planes have gone down in a week, right? Like 6. So I think the bottom line is access to our federal payment systems have historically been closed and closely held by a very few people because it includes such sensitive personnel information about millions of Americans. And as someone tweeted recently, they were like, so I'm sorry, is it going to be like your tax refund has been delayed because it appears that you posted something derogatory about Elon Musk on X? You know what I mean? Like, this is what is possible now. And no one knows what level of security these new servers even have. We could have just opened up this entire database to hackers that could sell our information to China. Elon could just give the information to China. Everything about what Elon and Donald and the Republicans have allowed right now is completely reckless. And so far, there's zero accountability.
Well, that's the most frightening thing, right? Is because you and I've long said it's hard to imagine what Donald Trump is going to do next, or somebody like Elon Musk is going to do next, because we don't have cold, dead, blackened hearts and evil souls. So I'm trying to sit here and wrap my head around what this could mean for us, for a billionaire Nazi, for all intents and purposes, fellow who likes to do Nazi salutes, if that's how somebody would rather say it, has all of our private data and information and banking information and what he could do with that. I mean, I think back to Cambridge Analytica and psychographic targeting.
Which, if you don't remember what Allison's talking about, that was the programs that were used and the company that used to mine our data before the 2016 election and allowed Russian infiltration to kind of target market us to make sure we were voting for Donald Trump because they knew what we liked, who we were, that kind of thing.
Or that we wouldn't vote for Hillary because of Bernie or because of, whatever, psychographic target. They could use it for that. They could sell this information is priceless. And he could sell it to Mohammed Bonesaw, his buddies over in South, I'm trying to wrap my head around what this could mean. I put out a post after he hijacked the treasury and I said, look, I will never just stop podcasting without telling you ahead of time. So if I stop podcasting, it's not because I decided to, it's because somebody stopped me from doing it. And everyone's like, well, that's a cryptic, scary post. And I'm like, it's kind of a cryptic, scary time. I do so much to keep my identity safe. And I was generally feeling pretty good about it until the treasury was hijacked. So, I'm like, I feel like we're all just kind of out there completely exposed to really, really bad guys. Like, I don't know how to boil it down and simplify it, but I also can't wrap my brain around the possibilities of what they could do with that information.
Yeah, no, it's like living through a Jason Bourne or like a James Bond movie, or like, Tom Cruise should be running very, very fast to stop them from getting this information. And they all failed. You know what I mean? Like, he has the information. Now, I mean, you and I, look, we have been very critical of the Democrats because they're the opposition party and, most of them aren't acting like it, and it's infuriating. But the only people that can really stop this very terrible behavior, which I think realistically should be referred to as a coup, are Republican politicians, because they're the ones in charge. Democrats can complain. They can draw attention to the crimes. They should be screaming from the rooftops about everything that is illegal and all of these behaviors, about Donald Trump's completely incompetent cabinet that he's surrounding himself with. I don't know why more of them are not doing that, but that's not their job. At this point, it's up to the Republicans who are in power to shut this absolute dismantling of our institutions and democracy and rule of law down. And they're not doing it.
Well, because they want the government dismantled. I mean, do you remember what was it, Grover Norquist promise about?
Oh, I love that you're saying, do I remember the Grover Norquist promise? No, Allison, I don't remember the Grover Norquist. Tell us about it. Remember the Grover? No, I do not. Tell me.
It's to shrink government down so you can drown it in a bathtub. So this has been a long Republican dream. I don't know that they wanted Elon Musk to hijack the treasury, or they wanted half of the FBI, which is a conservative, by the way, the rest of the half of the FBI, from all of the people who are talking to me, I've been talking to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of federal workers about what's going on inside. And apparently the people left at the FBI are being trained by ICE agents to go to the border as part of mass deportation. So that's what they want to do with the rest of the remaining FBI.
So if you are a child trafficker or a sex trafficker or any other terrorist, now's your time, baby. They're not looking for you. And that puts us entirely at danger. Yeah.
The Joint Terrorism Task Force, which was what Andy McCabe used to do, like Boston Marathon bombing and 9/11, that's gone. They've all sent them to the sanctuary city borders training or whatever, so that they can help ICE round up
mothers and toddlers.
Yeah. Like it's the complete dismantling of law enforcement in our country. One of the things that makes or made the United States and America what it is as a country, as an independent law enforcement, but that's a pillar of democracy.
Yeah, the rule of law.
And now we've got him, one of our other pillars of democracy, the free press. They're moving the New York Times and NPR and out of their Pentagon offices and replacing them with Breitbart and OAN. Like, this is happening. This dismantling of democracy, the fascist regime is here. It's taking over, and I'm scared for what they're going to do with our data.
Yeah. And in case you don't know what Allison was talking about there, the Pentagon Press Association has kicked the following publications out of the Pentagon Press Corps: the New York Times, NBC News, National Public Radio, Politico, and they're going to replace them with the New York Post, One American News, Breitbart, and the Huffington Post. The FCC is currently coming after NPR and PBS. So we can't even get the right news if it's not skewed by the administration at this point. This is like full authoritarian behavior. Take over the press, make sure that people can't get the information, make sure that we're only getting the propaganda they want us to get. It's just so incredibly dangerous. And look, like I was saying in one of my rants this week, it doesn't matter who you voted for, right? You didn't vote for this. This is not what they said they were going to do. Dismantle the government, dismantle law enforcement, absorb Canada, annex Canada, attack Panama, send, troops to Panama. We didn't vote for this. What we're seeing right now is a hostile takeover of the United States. And we need to acknowledge that, because if you're just a regular citizen right now, you count on VA benefits, you count on your Social Security check, you count on unemployment benefits or disability or Medicare or Medicaid, grants to run your business, or, just law enforcement looking out for terrorists that might blow up buildings near you. We just want a functioning government that isn't completely gutted or now apparently dead broke because we opened the vault to a bunch of thieves. And people should be outraged about this. They should be calling their state AGs and their federal senators and their congressperson to ask what they're doing about all of this, because this week has been absolutely bananas. Like, you and I have only talked about a couple of things. Like, on top of all of this, Trump is threatening this trade war, okay, with two of our biggest trading partners and allies, Canada and Mexico, with 25% tariffs on all imports, 10% tariffs on Canadian oil and gas, 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. This is a huge deal in itself, right? This is a huge deal in itself that could absolutely decimate our economy. I will say it was supposed to start on Saturday, February 1st, and now, as I understand it, it's going to start on Tuesday, February 4th. But both other North American countries, Canada and Mexico, were very forceful in their opposition, and they promised retaliatory tariffs on American products, as did China. I don't know if this is going to happen. I think it will. But if it does happen, it will be, as the very conservative Rupert Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal said, the dumbest trade war in history, because America will be tanking three economies for what feels like absolutely no reason. And this president, who ran on lowering costs of everything from groceries to gas, is going to immediately make everything ludicrously more expensive and alienate our closest neighbors and allies. This episode of the Politics Girl podcast is brought to you by Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain boxes are fully customizable to your taste and dietary restrictions. And in addition to their classic variety box, which my family gets, they've also launched a new gluten-free box and a plant-based box that is 100% vegan. I love the idea of having fresh baked bread ready to go in under 25 minutes. I like the sourdough bread and the baguettes. I love the cookies, and it's really nice to have some fresh pastries to bake on the weekend. Are you ready to have your favorite carbs delivered right to your doorstep? Be sure to check out Wild Grain so you can begin building your own box of artisanal breads, pastas, and pastries. For a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off the first box plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/politicsgirl to start a subscription. Yep, you heard me. That's free croissants and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/politicsgirl. That's wildgrain.com/politicsgirl, or you can use the promo code politicsgirl at checkout. I'll be honest, the more we move into this administration, the more afraid I am of being harassed or stalked or doxxed. The world has just become so harsh, and I put myself out there all the time. But what I don't deliberately put out is all of my personal information. Have you ever wondered how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for everyone to see? Well, it's more than you think. And it's not just your name and contact information. It can be your social security number, even your home address or your information about your family members. And those things are constantly being compiled by data brokers and then sold online. Data brokers make profit off our data because our data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy our private details, which can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, and unwanted spam calls. I'm sure you recently heard about all of our social security numbers getting compromised. This is terrible, which is why we want to do everything we can to protect our privacy with a service like Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes our personal information from hundreds of data brokers. When you sign up, you provide Delete Me with the exact information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular, personalized privacy reports showing what information they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. They are always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want out on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting PoliticsGirl to 64,000. Text PoliticsGirl to 64000. That's PoliticsGirl, all one word, to 64,000. This president, who ran on lowering costs of everything from groceries to gas, is going to immediately make everything ludicrously more expensive and alienate our closest neighbors and allies.
Yeah, and he's even kind of admitted it. He, in a Truth Social post, he's like, "Oh yeah, there's probably going to be a little pain at first," which we kind of heard right before the election from Elon Musk a little bit as well. Oh, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt for a minute, but then it's for the better. It's for your own good type of a situation.
Yeah, like I didn't see him running on "you're going to be in pain for a while." I know Elon said it. He said regular Americans are going to feel some suffering, but no one was taking Elon seriously because no one knew he'd be like taking over the entire government. But like you said, Trump himself just said that, there's going to be some suffering. There's going to be some pain for Americans. Like he didn't run on pain for Americans. He ran on fixing everything for Americans, right? And now he's saying maybe Canada should just get annexed. And then they wouldn't have to do this. And these are not things that the president of the United States should just be throwing around.
Well, and that's what I had said before. I said, look, when he was talking about Greenland and Panama and Canada being a state and joking, people thought he was joking when he was calling Trudeau a governor of the great state of Canada, of the United States. And I said, look, he's going to use economic power to try to force Denmark to sell Greenland, to try to force Canada to become the 51st state, to try to force Panama to hand over control of the Panama Canal. Well, what was he going to send the military? And I'm like, I don't think he has to. He can just economically, the United States has a lot of power. But in the meantime, it hurts Americans.
These three nations are a catastrophic decision. I mean, a live update just came in that Mexico has reached a deal with the U.S. to delay Trump's tariffs. President Trump said he would pause the tariffs on Mexico for a month, but the levies on Canada and China were still set to take effect on Tuesday. The U.S. shares fell at the opening bell. The stock market is dropping, and there were drops in the Asian and European market because people are fearing this trade war. Like, this is so serious. Like, listen, we get 40% of all of our goods in this country from China, Canada, and Mexico, right? 60% of our produce comes from Mexico. So I guess they've made some sort of a deal with that. But most of our lumber, our milk comes from Canada. A lot of our cars are put together in Mexico. Our electronics, our chips that make our electronics and make our cars come from China. Like this idea that we're going to have to feel suffering and pain. It's just, this is ludicrous. It's, the whole thing is so stupid. I mean, you don't alienate your closest allies. Like, I cannot believe that there are Americans out here that are so dead set on supporting Trump that they're now like absolutely dissing Canada for no reason. It breaks my heart as a Canadian citizen. It breaks my heart growing up beside America and having them be our closest ally. It breaks my heart seeing, them refusing to sing the Canadian national anthem at American games and the Canadians booing the national anthem at Canadian games. It makes me so sad. Like, listen, Canada does border control. They give money to border control to the states to help with the border. They sent emergency personnel to help with our disasters. They held all the American planes during 9/11 and took care of those people in towns. They just sent down planes and firefighters to help with the California fires. They have fought alongside us in every war. To give Canada the finger like this, to give Mexico the finger like this is so fucked up for an American president. And we just signed a new trade agreement with them like 2 years ago. It's like nothing, our word counts for nothing with this man as a leader. And that breaks my heart.
Well, yeah, it denigrates our promises that America makes around the world. It creates chaos, which is, I think part of the point. It's a feature and not a bug. And I stand with Canada. I actually love the fact that they're targeting goods and services in southern states and in red states, trying to limit the pain that Californians and New Yorkers and friends of Canada and supporters of Canada feel. And I mean, the thing that also really frightens me is that the people in charge, the Elon Musks and this cabinet that he's selected, are supposed to be the ones that are supposed to tell us how many jobs we've lost and how many people have died. And we're not going to get accurate reporting on that.
Nor do they care. The cabinet that he has put together has a collective worth of, I believe, $430 billion. These are not people that care about regular American lives. These are not people that are interested in how we suffer, how we feel, what we might want. And they're certainly not going to give us the right information. They're going to give us information that makes them look good. That's why we've put all the journalists out at the Pentagon and put all the propagandists in.
Yeah, and that's why we have to kind of watch the markets and watch what commerce does, watch what the business folks do. because they'll know if we've lost 250,000 jobs in January. And Trump says, we got 350,000 jobs, incredible. We added 350,000 jobs. The people with the money know what's really happening. Do you know what I mean? The people who it impacts, whose bottom line the shareholders are impacted by. And that's kind of where I'm going to be taking my cues from. And I know that the stock market is not the economy, but I just mean in broader terms, like we will see, I think, business leaders and people in commerce stepping up and saying, no, we didn't get 300,000 jobs. We lost jobs. We don't know exactly how many because I don't work at the Department of Labor. But those numbers are reported to the Department of Labor from elsewhere, right? They have to come from somewhere else. So hopefully someone else will be aggregating these real-time numbers, jobs, deaths from H1N1, things that Trump would otherwise lie about, or, you remember COVID, he wouldn't test and he wouldn't let that cruise ship dock because he didn't want to add to his numbers of people who had COVID or whatever. So I'm going to be trying to find the real numbers and the real consequences of this administration somewhere else besides from this administration.
Yeah, and it's going to be a challenge. I mean, honestly, the CDC right now is gutting the website of information on everything from airborne diseases to contraception information. 35 states right now are reporting a rise in flu and COVID-19 and norovirus and RSV, but no one's telling us because the CDC and the NIH and the FDA, so our food, our medicines, our health, are no longer allowed to communicate with the public or with our doctors to tell us what's going on. Someone pointed out, and I think this is a very good point, like this, taking this information from us, from the CDC, from the NIH, from the FDA is actually theft because the American taxpayers paid for this information, right? We paid to have these drugs found, researched and this information stored. I will tell people in a bit of good news, according to some experts, the data in a lot of these places has been backed up and archived by, independent people that work at those agencies that knew that it couldn't be information that was lost. So federal workers are actually smarter than the directives that they were given. But like you said, like this is what we're looking at right now is an untrustworthy government, a government that's not going to give us the proper information, a government that goes back on its word. I mean, if people haven't heard about this Panama thing, Panama is apparently bracing for war, right? Our new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is in their country talking about how we can annex or take back the Panama Canal, which is something we willingly gave the Panamanians in 1999. Panama is warning its people of a U.S. invasion, saying they're worried about mass casualties if the U.S. starts a war. And I'm like, if the U.S. starts a war, like, is this not the same guy who said there would be no new wars under him? He's literally getting into trade wars and threatening to invade our allies. He hasn't done anything about Ukraine. He apparently now wants to level Gaza. You know what I mean? And now another foreign nation is like, we're afraid he's going to invade us, right? Like we're cutting off U.S. aid to foreign countries. It's just so astonishing how poorly behaved we're being. We're just such assholes as a country.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing. It's globally embarrassing. I mean, didn't he fire some missiles yesterday or the day before? Sent a bunch of missiles over to Syria or something. I mean,
oh God, I didn't see that.
It's very hard to keep up with.
Deliberately, it's done deliberately. I mean, I was going to ask you. Apparently, Elon tried to get information, highly protected secrets in some skiff. Did you know about that? Like,
yeah,
what is that?
I heard about that. He was trying to access classified documents. A private citizen. He does have clearance, but not SCI. I don't think he has TSSCI, compartmented information, right? Like it's a need to know thing. Like the guy who puts the satellites up for our national security. There's certain classified information he might need to know, but whatever he was trying to access is not part of that. Being in the Navy, working for the government's had all of my personal information, my fingerprints, my DNA, my blood, my everything for my whole life. And I've never been concerned about that until now.
Yeah. I mean, which brings me to the last piece of hideous news I'm going to get into before we just talk about how to fight back. Trump is now claiming he's going to reopen Gitmo and put 30,000 prisoners in a place that at most has had 800 prisoners. And that would be by definition a concentration camp. And I think we have to keep in mind he already has contracts to private prison operations to open 2 10,000 person prisons, 14 500 to 1,000 person prisons. And now apparently he's in talks with El Salvador to have U.S. prisons there. And I'm like, U.S. prisons there for what? Because that's not just going to be for illegal immigrants. Like, that's not like, oh, we're going to take all the, rapists from Guadalajara and put them in El Salvador. Like, that's not it, right? It's going to be for anyone he wants out of the way. And you were just saying at the beginning of this pod, if I ever stop podcasting without telling you, it's because someone made me stop, right? And someone wrote me this week to say, I can't believe you're not scared doing what you're doing. And I was like, I am scared, but what's the alternative? Like, what's the alternative? Giving in, stopping, allowing this criminal and his horrifying friends to just have America? Like, no, I'm just going to keep doing the work, and I'm just going to keep doing the work scared.
This is what I do. And I took several oaths. You took an oath when you became a citizen.
Yeah.
It matters. Those things matter. It cost me my job during the first Trump administration. It cost me my job, the job I had done for over 10 years, my heart, my soul, helping veterans, working at the Department of Veterans Affairs, helping active duty service military and their family get healthcare timely access to quality healthcare. Meant everything to me. As a disabled veteran with PTSD due to military sexual trauma, I wanted to make sure nobody went through what I went through, or at least didn't get care for it. It's what I do, and I risked that to stand up and be loud about what was going on in that administration and the laws that would be the lawlessness. And it cost me my job. And I won't ever stop doing it. And that's, like I said, if I'm not on the air one day, it's not because I've decided to disappear.
Same.
So it's frightening. That's the level of frightening that it is. And I'm very glad to hear that Canada now has a political asylum program for folks like you and me. At ground on the border, land border. So if I need to drive up to Canada, I'll have my rig with me. I'm bringing my microphone, but if I have to drive up to Canada, they'll let me in and give me asylum. So I'm very happy about that, to know that.
But to imagine that we had to get there, as a veteran, as someone who fought for this country, that we're even here, listen, I want to leave people with something that isn't like, and it's over, blah, so listen, what do we do? Because this conversation itself is why people are tempted to shut down and check out. But that's like the worst thing we can do right now. I think back to Timothy Snyder's call to not obey in advance. And I think we have to be unwavering. As Americans that this is supposed to be the land of the free. I believe this is the land of the free. And I think we need to challenge anyone who is suggesting they take your freedom from you. Jamel Bouie, who is a terrific writer.
B-Boy Bouillabaisse, right?
He's amazing.
I love him. I love him.
But he made this interesting point this week about DEI, and how DEI is being ripped out of all our institutions. And he said, you know what? I think we should factor in how these states, how these counties, how these localities, how the hospitals are going to respond to these executive orders. Like, I get that you want to do it, but what's your enforcement mechanism, right? So instead of just affirming this belief that Trump is king of America, it is important to recognize that federalism provides the states the tools to push back, or even sometimes ignore some of these orders. Like, he pointed out there's 13,000 public school districts in the US. There's about 100,000 primary and secondary schools. What agents are they planning to send to all those schools to make sure kids who are gay aren't being allowed to be gay? That there's no trans kid in grade 5. You know what I mean? Like, where are they sending it? Because there is a part of us that needs to be a little bit like, I hear you, but you can't do that. And fuck you, make me every single day. I think that's a very essential American, quite frankly, attitude to be bringing to this wannabe authoritarian dictatorship that's telling us the way it's going to be. And we have to be like, is it?
No, I agree. And that's something I'm working on right now along the fuck you make me lines is I've just set up and I just actually got the text message that the tax identification number is here. I now have a 501c3 and it's a nonprofit called fedoath.org. And we're going to be, there's not a website yet, but I will be sending out information soon. But we're going to be raising money and funding legal pushback for federal workers who are being wrongfully terminated or set aside on administrative leave for DEIA when that's completely illegal to do. So we're going to be helping get resources and fundraise and refer to lawyers we're working with, like Mark Zaid, who I know that you know. and whistleblower aid, and Kel McClanahan, who is the lawyer who's suing for those 2 OPM employees for privacy concerns. And that's the national security counselors, my lawyer who's been representing me in my wrongful termination case from when I was kicked out of the government. So follow me at Mueller, She Wrote. I'm going to be putting out some information. There's going to be a Patreon, so you can give $5 a month, and all of that money will go to help fund the legal, I'm calling it a legal offense fund, not a legal defense fund. So we can get lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to really gum this up and throw sand in the gears of this dismantling of our institutions. So that's my little thing that I'm doing.
That's amazing. I mean, that's the thing. I think that what they say right now is that what we have to do is pick the things we are passionate about.
Focus. Yeah. Focus on a thing, because the best opposition is focused.
Yes. You have to have focused resistance. We can't be like, everything is terrible. You have to be like, what are the things I care most about? Set boundaries with how much you take in and put out, right? Like pick your 2 to 3 key issues that you care deeply about and put your attention on them, because you're talking about this sustained focus is going to make a difference, not scattered awareness, right? Find people like you and I who are aggregators and experts and people who will analyze what's going on and synthesize these topics for you, who can see the big picture and explain the patterns and break down events. So you're not just like doom scrolling all day and you don't know what to do. Like watch the Daily Beans or listen to the Daily Beans every morning and get kind of like a breakdown of the news without having to, absorb it all into your body, because we're doing it for you. Listen to the Politics Girl podcast once a week so I can round it up for you. Like, look at what we're doing here. We shot a podcast on Friday. We were like, nope, people will need more information. We reshot it on Monday, right? Like we have to remember that we can't take it all in. Take the help from the people that are doing it. And also take breaks, right? Take breaks to process what's happening, because this overwhelm is the point. And when we remember that, we regain some power. We don't feel like we're constantly in fight or flight, right? Like this is going to be a flippin' marathon, and we're going to have to pace ourselves, because this is too much. It is too much, and it is deliberately too much. I think I read, and I think this is a brilliant way of looking at it. Wait 24 to 48 hours before reacting to anything new policies, new news, new things. Because as they say, the urgent clouds the important. So a lot of time, initial reporting you hear will often miss the context, the main points, and then you don't get the full story. Wait and watch how something unfolds before you start reacting to it, right? And react to it within your communities. Find and build community around you of people who care about the same things you do, or who care about different things that you do, and you guys focus on different things and then keep each other informed, because network intelligence beats individual overload. I think the whole thing is that they want us scattered and overwhelmed and shutting down. And our focus right now, our sustained focus, is going to be our resistance.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I look at somebody like Mark Elias, laser focused on democracy docket, voting rights, and those kinds of lawsuits.
Right. You don't see him also out here talking about the environment. That's not his thing. If you care about what's going on with the environment, make that your thing. If you're someone like me that really cares about healthcare, make that your thing. If you're someone like you who really cares about veterans' rights or legal challenges to
Federal
protect
workers,
people,
yeah.
federal workers, do that. I think it's really important. And then also dude, keep calling these representatives, right? Keep calling the representatives. Democracy is supposed to be interactive. It's supposed to be by, for, and of the people. But the people have to also be calling, call them every single day. Shannon Watts, who's the founder of Moms Demand Action, said, we're supposed to be lighting fires under our lawmakers. Tell them you're being harmed. Tell them you feel unprotected. Tell them you feel unsupported. Expose what you're feeling to them, and do it every day. She said, call them every day to thank them if they've done something right, or to shame them if they're doing something wrong, right? And then keep talking about it with your friends and family, post online if that's your thing, because they want us to stop telling the truth to each other, and they want to tell us what the truth is. And we can't have that, because then we start normalizing that which is not normal.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And take breaks, self-care, post a cat video every now and again. Very important to make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you laugh, make sure you dance, have a little joy. It's so important. I remember reading something from Dan Savage where he was like, we were fighting for our rights, gay rights, LGBTQ rights. We were throwing bricks during the day, and at night we were partying, we were dancing, and we were full of joy. So keep fighting and keep dancing.
Yeah. No, that is a wonderful quote, because he said it was the dancing that reminded us what we were fighting for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us again today, Allison. So please tell people before you go how they can follow your work moving forward, because they really do need to be doing that.
Sure. Just follow me anywhere at Mueller, She Wrote. And if you want to chip in $5 to help out federal workers, you can, by the time you hear this episode, I will have probably set up a patron on patreon.com, and just search for Fed Oath. You'll see us. You'll be able to recognize that it's us, and chip in. I think it might make you feel better that you're helping out some federal workers.
Yeah. And don't give up, my friends. This is still our country, even though they're acting like it's theirs.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing what you do. It's so, so important. And thanks for, that's courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what you do, even though it's scary. So thank you for having that courage.
Right back at you, my friend. You too. Thank you for all you do. So that was Dr. Allison Gill, reminding us of the importance of finding people who can make the fire hose of information less painful. What's going on is a lot. Honestly, it is too much. So we need to set boundaries, both with our time and with the issues we engage with, because sustained, focused work is what will truly make a difference. Remember to take breaks, not only so you have a moment to process what's happening, but also so the facts have time to bake. Focus on getting your information from people who care more about being right than being first. We are living in chaos, so build a community around yourself that brings you some peace. None of this is normal, and we need people around us who remind us of that. Do not lose your joy to the hate. It is our joy that reminds us what we're fighting for. I want to thank Allison for joining us today, and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now take a couple of hours off before you get back into it. You deserve it after this episode. Until next week, PG out. Before you go, I just want to say, if you're a premium member of this podcast, thank you. And if you're not a member, please consider supporting my work. As Allison said, we have to expand new media. We are almost completely overwhelmed by states supporting legacy media and propaganda at this point, so we have to be out here supporting those of us who are still bringing you the facts. So if you aren't a member of PoliticsGirl Premium, please consider going to PoliticsGirl.com and signing up. You will get this podcast ad-free, along with my rants and bonus content sent directly to your inbox. So even if my work is silenced on social media, you will still get access to truth and facts. There's a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also at PoliticsGirl.com. And as always, please like and share this podcast so we can grow our audience. The more people who have access to the right information, the better. And as always, thank you so much for your time and support. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, in partnership with the Meidas Media Network, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.